Welcome back, everybody. Our guest right now on set joining us is longtime Tesla investor Ron Barron. Of course, he is the chairman and CEO of Barron Capital. And Ron, we always look forward to these conversations with you. We've got a lot of ground that we want to cover. Obviously, we want to talk Tesla, but I know you had a few thoughts right off the top about some things we've been talking about on the show this morning.
So I was watching your program this morning, and it's totally inspiring. And Dr. Ruff, I mean, amazing. And Robert Kraft is a friend of mine for a long time. And thank you for being sensitive to people who are Jewish. So having so many Jews on your program in one day, it must be amazing. And so one of the things, so I'm admiring Bill Ackman and Mark Rowan, and one of the things that I guess people don't always realize is that, you know, when I go to Temple, there's security. When I walk around the city, I have to have security. When I go to my golf club, I have to have security. It's just hard to comprehend. I never felt threatened before in my life. I feel threatened now. And so it's really uncomfortable. But I'm optimistic. And in the 1930s, when Hitler came to power, there was nothing like, you know, people standing up right now. They are non-Jewish people standing up. So I'm always an optimistic person, and I'm always a hopeful person. And I think things are at the bright side. People are standing up to protect everyone's rights, not just you know, for ignoring it.
Are you getting involved on any of these levels? Robert Kraft has.
Not the way Robert is.
Yeah.
But what I did is that I do the best I can. I mean, if someone is a pro-Hamas supporter, I fire him. You know, if someone wants to sue me, that's fine. And so we do social searches before we hire someone, and you know, try to have influence in any organizations that I'm involved in. And one of the things I did is that we have, I don't know, 600,000 shareholders, 700,000 shareholders, and right after October 7th, I reprinted my rabbi's sermon and sent it to 700,000 people, just so that people could see how it affected Jews. So that's this thing. So that was in top of our letter. But anyway, I came here to talk about stocks, not politics. But thank you for giving me a chance to be part of this program today. Yeah, amazing program.
Thank you for letting us know how you feel about these things, too. Why don't we jump right in and look at what's happening with the markets right now, and maybe specifically Tesla, because Tesla has captured everyone's attention. You have been probably the longest Tesla shareholder and one of the most outspoken bulls out there on this. You are a huge believer in Elon Musk, and I think you just came back from a trip to visit both SpaceX and Tesla.
Yeah. So about the markets first, just briefly about that, is that we're long-term investors. We visit companies in which we invest. We study the businesses, look for opportunities, bet on people. But we're long-term when you see the performance of the stocks in which we've invested. So I started in the business in 1970, and I was living in my friend's basement. I was in debt. In 1982, we started Barron Capital, had 10 million under management with an M. Now in 1992, 100 million, now it's 43 billion. And we've made our clients 44 billion in profits since we started. And I'm hoping that we make a double in the next 5 or 6, 7 years, and I think we'll make a double again 5 or 6 or 7 years after that. Of course, I am 80, so there are not that many people who are 80. I guess Buffett does. Munger did. You know, it was also very interesting. I was listening to your interview with Charlie Munger, you know, 34 days before he died, and you said, "Charlie, do you have a bucket list?" And he said, "Yes, I do, Becky." And you said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well," and he's 99 at the time. "Well, I've always wanted to catch a 200-pound tuna." But you know, I'm not quite as strong as I was 4 years ago. He's 99. So it is encouraging.
And it was actually less than 2 weeks before he passed. So
amazing.
It was a very, that he was up to the very end.
Right. So I am long-term all the way in everything we're doing. And I asked you, you know, to not introduce me as a Tesla bull, because that sounds like the only thing about
one way. I didn't know why it said investor. Yeah.
So I asked you to do it. Please make me an investor. I am incredibly bullish about the opportunities for Tesla, but I don't want people to think this is the only thing he does one way. And
no, but it is your largest holding. To be fair, Tesla is your largest holding. SpaceX is your second largest holding. Right. You have a long list of investments, but these two, because you got in so early, are your two largest holdings.
Well, we have 400 investments. And the top 30, which is that sheet, represent about 56, 57% of our assets. And by being a long-term investor, you can actually do quite well. And it's hard for most people to do better than the stock markets. I recommend people invest in index funds, passive investing. And if you did that, that's a good way to hedge against inflation. So inflation makes everything worth twice, it costs twice as much every 14 or 15 years, 4%, 5% a year. Sometimes it gets down a little bit, but it's 4 or 5% a year for my whole lifetime. And so the way you hedge against that is investing in good growth businesses and staying with them for the long term. So 98% or 97% of our assets beat the market, 96% top 20, and 45% are the top 1%. In fact, Barron Partners Fund, the #1 fund in the United States since 2003. And that's my promotion. So Tesla. We invested in Tesla I met him in 2010.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. I was introduced to him, said, would you like to meet him? I said, oh yeah, I'd like to meet him. I read about him with electric cars and space, and so met him. 2010, comes to my office, and he's unshaven, 37 years old at the time. He's unshaven, he just made $100 million in PayPal, didn't have to work anymore, but working like crazy, unshaven, baggy cargo pants, clogs, hair all over the place, and talking about how he wants to have electric cars. And I was hoping that he would be successful, but I thought it wasn't very likely. And in my lifetime, 50 or 60 car companies had gone bankrupt. So 2010, continued to study and work on it. Came public, I didn't invest in it. And then now it's, but for 4 years, kept visiting and talking. And finally, I'm convinced I should be investing. And in 2014, they were doing 40,000 cars a year, and he told me, I'm visiting him in his factory, sitting in a corner with Mike Lippert, who works with me, and we were there for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and talking. I was really prepared. I was talking about space and life, other places, and black holes and dark, and first light, 14 billion years ago, Big Bang, and so we're talking about all these things, and then Mike says, Ron, I gotta go. I got another meeting, but I'll see you tonight. I said, I can't believe I'm leaving this meeting, most interesting meeting I've ever listened to. And so he leaves, and we catch up in the hotel. He says, I said, Mike, at least you were smart enough to own Tesla. He says, I don't own it anymore. He said, you don't own it after you just listened to it? You don't own it? Are you crazy? And he said, well, I sold it before we got here. And so I said, I got to own it. And the stock had just tripled. And then the stock doubled again. And I still didn't own a share. And then for the next 3 years, 2014 to 2016, after the stock had already gone up 7 or 8 times, for the next 4 years, the next 2 years, we invested $400 million. And then we've made right now about $4 billion. We had made $5 billion, and we've made about 4 right now. And we've sold about a quarter or a third of our stock about 3 years ago. At a price of $220 a share. It's now $160. And at that time, they had grown from 40,000 cars a year to 600,000 cars a year. And now they're doing $1.8 million. So the business is 3 times bigger.
But I remember when you sold a few years ago, when you sold that stake, you did it because you were worried about the portfolio being too heavily invested in one particular stock.
It's gone up 20 times, yes.
Yeah, and it's gone up 20 times. Do you hit that point again? Do you have to trim more just because you now have $3 billion? What did you say, $4 billion? I've got $4 billion. Yeah. At $3 billion as of 3/31 today, it must be $4 billion?
It's around, I don't know, it's around $3.5, $4 billion, something like that.
But the reason that you gave in the past wasn't that you didn't believe in it.
It was just too big of an investment.
It was just too big of an investment.
Yes.
Do you hit that point again?
Yes, yes. Well, at some point, maybe. But I think SpaceX is going to be, I think we're going to make 20 times in SpaceX over the next 15 years. I think we're going to make a quadruple in the next 6 or 7. Can it be too big? Sure. So I'm always watching.
Just because you're managing other people's money.
But I do think that we're going to get a lot more money to manage, so therefore it's going to get diluted down by the new money coming in. Always thinking about how large the position should be. Yes, but
so what do you think right now? The stock came out, the earnings this week came out. It was a disappointment for the quarter. It was the worst cash flow quarter that the company's seen in its history, but the stock was up 12% because Elon started talking about what he sees in the future and the idea of bringing out cheaper cars to go through these things. Where do you stand on what the company should be valued?
So I know Joe's not a big believer in electric cars because he likes his Porsche. But I think all the cars are going to be electric, and I think this hybrid is just a sort of a holding off action so the automobile companies don't have to lose money on the electric cars. But the electric cars, I think, is going to be all the cars 10, 15 years from now. And I think hybrids, I know you love hybrids, that's not going to last either. They're too expensive and they're not effective enough, and they're not going to be part of the mix either. So it's going to be all electric. And so what I think is going to happen is that the reason the stock is down is not because of the quarter. The reason the stock is down...
Well, the stock's up because of the stuff that he said.
Well, the stock's down so much.
Well, it's down 35% year to date. It's down 1%, or it's up 1% over the course of the last year. Yeah,
it's not so exciting to be up 1% in a year when everything is, the market is so strong. I don't worry about short term, but I do look around all the time and see everyone getting rich, and I'm not poor, but I haven't made a lot of progress in the last 3 years. So therefore, I think it's like a rubber band. I'm going to catch up again. So what I think about the reason the stock is down is because people were concerned that he was going to abandon the idea of having a low-cost car and go all into robo-taxis. That's the reason the stock is down. And there was a report in Reuters said he's canceling this new factory that's going to make low-cost cars, $25,000 cars, competition from China. So there's only one company in China that's profitable, by the way. That's BYD, Warren's company, Buffett's company. And that's a company makes $1 billion a quarter, and our company makes $4 billion a quarter. No one else makes money. Ford loses so much. General Motors, everyone loses money on this. It's much more complicated to make these cars. It's interesting. I was talking yesterday about motors. So motors in a car cost $5,000 a car. That's what the normal, these 100-year-old companies cost them $5,000. We can make a motor for $1,000. Costs $5,000. So they get...
No, but then you have to have a battery that's more expensive.
Oh, no, I'm talking about if you're making the internal combustion engine cars. I'm just talking about how stagnant businesses become and how used they are to operating the way they've always operated, that they don't look for new things to do, new ways to operating oriented toward making things cheaper. He can do things for $1,000 that other people cost $5,000. It's amazing. That's if he wanted to be an electric car, a gasoline car company. All I'm pointing out is that people get entrenched and they do things without trying to make things better and cheaper and faster all the time. There's no incentive to do that. So Munger says, "Show me the incentives, and I'll show you how people act." And that's the idea, that the incentive, what's the incentive for someone who's 55, 60, we got to get off of this. But the idea is that that's the reason stock's down. And now
So what's the reason it's going to go up, and when?
Oh, it's going to go up huge.
When?
And now. I mean, now is the bottom.
Okay.
And so what they're doing is they're going into robo-taxis, and they're going to make the low-cost car. So they're making the low-cost car, except they have excess capacity right now. They have capacity to make 3 million cars a year. They're making 1.8 million. So there's 1.2 million cars they can make extra in an existing facility with no more capital, and they're not going to make the cars direct cost as cheaply as they did before, as they expected to. But overall, until they expect to do 5 million of these new cars.
Can I ask you a robo-taxi question? Because that is, I think, the future of this company,
yes.
And a lot of the value is relying on that. Mm-hmm. The question is what you think the genuine timing of a robo-taxi that's reliant on cameras only, and this has always been the question about, can you do it with just cameras relative to what Waymo and Cruise have done, and there's been even questions about that, using the radar and the LiDAR and the whole rig that lives on those vehicles.
Well, we have a small investment in Cruise because I wanted to see what they're doing. And Waymo is, their cars are $200,000, $250,000.
Because of all of the sensors and all of
and they're trying to take cost out. And for us, it's software. And so basically, the advantage that we have right now at Tesla is that they've sold 6 million cars, and 3.5 or 4 million are collecting data. So the data is what's really valuable. They're doubling their amount of compute every 90 days.
I don't disagree with you. The question is a timing question of how quickly you can actually put these things into the wild.
I was just in California. Last Sunday, I was in Vail because I want to see what they're doing with AI in the mountain and capital spending. And then that was on Sunday. And then on Monday, I was in SpaceX in LA in the morning with some engineers and some finance people. And the afternoon, I went to Tesla, and I was with the autonomous driving people and also the compute people. And then afterwards, they said to me, "Ron, would you like to see how we've made unbelievable advances?" The first 11 versions had to be designed so that they had to code every single thing that happened.
Right, and now it's all AI.
It was impossible. And so therefore, they weren't making progress for 2 or 3 years. They were at a plateau. And now what's happened, they have version 12. They have all this enormous amounts of data, and now they have compute to figure out. Humans can't do it. Now they have compute to figure everything out. And so now you're on the verge with autonomous driving in your car. So I said, okay, show me. So we do the few hours, couple, 3 hours. And then before I'm going to go back to New York, I say, okay, so I want to see how it works. So we go into the parking lot, and we get into the car, and I have an analyst with me, and then they had the compute person, and they had a an investor person. And so we're sitting in the car, and so where do you want to go? So I want to see Steve Jobs' house. And say, okay, so they punch in the address, and we get into the car drives around by itself. Didn't do it, all we did is punch it in. Drive around in the parking lot, goes to the road, there's traffic going both ways. It looks both ways, looking for an entry to get in, gets an entry, pulls in, makes a left-hand turn, drives right behind cars in front of us. There's a stop sign, first car stops, goes, second car stops, goes. We pull up to the stop sign, car looks both directions, makes a right-hand turn. Just drives. And then all of a sudden there's a pedestrian crossing the street. The car stops to let the pedestrian cross the street. The pedestrian, I don't know if I was being set up on this, but the pedestrian waves, and then the car starts going again. Then it pulls up, then it makes a left-hand turn, and then goes in front of Steve Jobs' house. It's a nice house. It was just a house, though. I was expecting a house, but it was a house. And so stopped in front of Steve Jobs' house. Then he has that house, and he doesn't, his wife does, the house next door. Then they had looks like 3/4 of an acre for sale next door for $15 million. They don't go back.
That's a
but
little
it drove
creepy,
all by itself. Yeah, all drove by.
Take me to stalk somebody's house.
Drove all by itself. So what's going to happen is that I thought the idea had been that you're going to sell a lot of cars. So as a result of that, once they have those cars out there, you'll sell autonomous driving. And he said the other day that he's negotiating to sell autonomous driving for some other cars too. No one has the compute, no one has the data.
That's the long-term thing. If Tesla's everywhere, just like
if they're
the
making
Tesla
cars,
charging.
if they're making cars, they make $7,000 in profit a car for a car they're selling for $35,000, minus the $7,500 credit.
But what's your timing? But just give me the timing. That's the whole game.
Now.
Now?
Now. It's now. People think it's forever, but listen to how much you're going to make. So they're making $7,000 in profit a car for a car that they sell for. Do I have time? How much time we got here?
We're running short on time.
Yeah.
We've got about 4 minutes.
When I say now, you believe on August 8th
they're going to make
that they're going to announce robotaxis that will be available now
for 20,000. Well, they're going to talk about it in August. 08. $20,000 car. They're going to make $40,000 or $50,000 a car a year. And if they have 1 million cars, 2 million cars, 5 million cars, they're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars.
I believe that's the promise of the company, and I think it's amazing. The reason I'm asking the question about the timing is I think there's a view that those vehicles are not comparable yet to what Waymo or the other guys are doing. And by the way, those guys can't even do it in some cities, most cities, actually.
You will be amazed at how quickly they come. I mean, maybe it's not this moment in robo, but it's certainly this moment in autonomous.
And for the government approval that would come with that?
Well, it takes a while for all those things to happen, 2 or 3 years for everything. But they're going to make hundreds of billions of dollars a year on that business. Hundreds of billions, not including the batteries, not including the AI, not including robots.
I'm really glad it stopped for that pedestrian. I mean, that was big when you told me it did that, because now if it hadn't, that'd be a problem, Ron, right? I mean, you were surprised it stopped for the
yeah. I was
Did
pleased.
you have your foot on the brake, hovering, ready to go?
Nothing.
So you're a total believer. Like, we're
I'm
ready to
sitting
go.
next to the guy, and it's just.
He wasn't driving.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't driving. It was just
Nobody was driving.
I got to give a
Car
couple
was.
minutes in SpaceX.
No, they have drivers.
But before you get to SpaceX, very quickly, Tesla's pay package for Elon Musk has been a huge center of controversy. A Delaware court overrode it. There's this idea that you can vote on it as shareholders, but I saw another article that I just read that said even if you vote on it again, it could be brought back to Delaware.
The only way
court.
Tesla's alive is because of this guy.
So how would you resolve it?
Well, I think that the class action lawsuit for someone who had 10 shares or something, and the lawyers wanting $5 billion, that's crazy. And so the way it seems to me is this, there was a contract that was arranged and arrived at and agreed to, and how do you go back on a contract? This doesn't seem fair. And the only reason the company is surviving because the guy slept on the floor under his desk for. So let me go SpaceX. But
yeah, let's do it because we're running real short.
SpaceX, we've been investing in, so 2014 to 16 with Tesla, 2017 on, we've invested $900 billion now in SpaceX. It's now worth $2.3 billion. We have a partnership that's $650 million of that. I think that we're going to make a double in 2027 when they go public. 2030, I think we'll make another double. And in the 2030s, I think we can make 5 times again. So I'm thinking about 20 to 30 times your money. What they have is that they have the only way you can get to space for nothing. Because, well, not for nothing. It's $20 million to costing us right now. It's about to cost us $6 million to get to space. It costs other people $100, $200 million. So we get to space cheaply because we use the rockets over and over and over again, like an airplane. And then what happens is that we have the internet for the entire planet from space. So Elon owns 48%. Google owns 7%. We own 1.25%. We buy more. So most people have partnerships. They charge 2 and 20. We charge 1%. On the way to 0.5%, no carry. And the reason for that is this is a customer acquisition tool. I want people to know that we're doing them a favor. This is a way I want to make sure all of my mutual funds are on it. This is customer acquisition for me. I want to know that all of my, I want to be on all the platforms for all these brokerage firms. That's what we're doing for that. And the opportunity here is that Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley think that the internet opportunity is $1.2 trillion in revenues a year. Elon thinks he's going to get 50% of those revenues in the next 15 years. And that's for a company you're valuing today for $180 billion, last year $150 billion. And I'm so excited about this. So I was reading about Sam Altman, who doesn't get along very well with Elon, of course. And he said that the way you become really successful is by doing things distinct, different from everyone else. And everything you do makes everything you've done before just a footnote to what you're going to do next. I think SpaceX has that opportunity.
Wow.
Anyway.
It's mind-boggling when we can't even get our minds around what the potential of cheap travel into suborbital or even
it's the internet. So if you want to have equal distribution of wealth, you have to have everyone knowledgeable. You have to have education. The only way you get it is with the internet. And so basically, there's 8 billion people on the planet. 30% don't have the internet. And in order for us to make a quadruple by 2030 means that we'll have 50 million customers and $60 billion of revenues. We're now growing about 30, 40% a year. And we have now, it's $12 billion of annual revenues, $5 billion in cash, no debt, and growing. And everyone, they do offerings of $750 million twice a year for employees. The company, and Elon buys, 48%. It's not quite enough. So he still adds. And so my feeling is that this is a business that when people start seeing financials about it, they're going to be so excited. They are 3 or 4 times oversubscribed, every one of these offerings, with no investment banker in 5 days. 5 days. So the biggest buyers are the biggest, Fidelity, GIC, the biggest buyers, and Blackstone. So everyone is cut back dramatically, and we're the largest buyer in all of these offerings.
Did you finally buy some Bitcoin?
Congratulations. I'm amazed. No, of course I didn't.
You still haven't?
No. I'm enjoying how
you always tell me that you wish you'd listen, but you never did.
No, I didn't say I wish I'd listened. I said congratulations to you. It's not something I do, but congratulations to you. I mean, amazing. You withstood all that. So I withstand stuff for Tesla.
Still withstanding it.
Yeah, I know.
On a daily basis. I know.
I mean, I read about it periodically. It's just, so you talked about investing in productive assets. I invest in productive assets, not in commodities.
Ron, I want to thank you very much for coming in and for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me. It was fun. Thank you.
SpaceX.
By the way, Doctoroff, unbelievable. Like, unbelievable. You watch that, it chokes you up just to look at it.
It's an amazing story. Amazing New York story.
Yeah.
And an amazing story just about life.
Yeah.
A way to think about things.
And Robert Kraft, boy, that guy stands up. He is something else. I know him for like 40 years.
I think he's coming up